Hello and welcome to Studio RC, an encouragement for both your recovery and your faith. My name is Pastor Max, and I am an alcoholic. So this episode, we are going to start on a 7-episode journey, and we're going to take a look at some statements that are made by Jesus. Now, some may ask, who is Jesus? Maybe you have people at your recovery church campuses that are asking that. Maybe you yourself are asking, who is Jesus? Ever since his time on earth, people have questioned Jesus' identity and what it means and who he is. We find in the Gospel of John, one of the 4 Gospels that introduce and show us who Jesus is and all of many insights to his miracles and his thought processes. Jesus answers this question with 7 powerful statements. In his own words, Jesus tells us what we need to know about who he is. So for the next 7 episodes of Studio RC, we're going to have 7 of these. This intro will be the same each time, and then we'll go into a different statement. But we're going to take a look at the 7 I am statements of Jesus. Each episode will discover a different character trait of Jesus that reveals just who he is and the hope we can have in him. And my hope is that by the end of these episodes that you'll be able to see truly that Jesus is God, and that's who he's claiming to be. And he always has been and will always be everything we need. And how he both encourages our recovery through the scripture. And I find that these statements are so powerful. I got some of the teachings will be from American Bible Society and some other websites informed how I took a look at these 7 I am statements. What's unique is these statements are unique to the Gospel of John. We have Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the 4th of the Gospel. And these 7 statements, Jesus begins by saying, I am. And then he fills in the blank of who he is. And it gives a different aspect of his character. And the phrase, I am, it refers all the way back to the Hebrew scriptures in the very beginning into Exodus chapter 3, verse 14, where God introduces himself to Moses with the expression, I am who I am. And this statement became a way to connect with God personally and was used throughout Israel's history to convey that God always was and always will be. Jesus is explicitly identifying himself as God. Sometimes people say, well, did he really say that? These are part of those statements that clearly identify. He doesn't want to leave any doubt of who he is. And each of the 7 I am statements follow this basic pattern. They're written basically as metaphors, and with each of the key element to the metaphor being that Jesus expresses, I am, and I'll share them in just a moment what those 7 statements are. Jesus always provides an explanation with it. So there is no misunderstanding to its meaning, and that it's clear to his listeners who Jesus is saying that he is. These metaphors often complement one of Jesus's miracles. They come alongside of it. And the statement and a miracle, they both contribute to the understanding of one another. And each of the miracle is interpreted by the metaphor or the metaphorical I am statement that Jesus makes. Each statement is intended to give the miracle meaning and context for the ministry that Jesus is performing. And they show us that Jesus' miracles were not just random acts of power or mercy, but that they were actions that demonstrated the meaning of his ministry and his teachings and were very intentional, as Jesus often was. Let me share with you the 7 statements, and then each episode we will take a look at a different element or a different I am statement. So the first one is, bread of life. I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never go hungry. The second statement is, I am the light of the world. I'm the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. I am the gate of the sheep. He says, very truly, I tell you, I am the gate of the sheep. Whoever enters through me will be saved. They will come in and go out and find pasture. The fourth statement is, I am the good shepherd. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep, and my sheep know me. The fifth I am statement, I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live even though they die, and whoever lives by believing in me will never die. The sixth I am statement is, I am the way and the truth and the life. He goes on to say, no one comes to the Father except through me. If you really know me, you'll know my Father as well. From now on, you do know him and have seen him. And then the final I am statement is, I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardeners. You are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. This sets us up for hopefully what is going to be a very fascinating, encouraging series on the I am statements. So without any further ado, let's go to this week's episode of and this particular I am statement that we're going to examine. May you enjoy it. God bless. And here we go. This episode, we are going to tackle the second I am statement by Jesus from the Gospel of John. And today's statement is, I am the light of the world. It says in John 8:12, I'm the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. It says just a couple verses later in chapter 9, verse 5, while I am in the world, I am the light of the world. Big statements from Jesus, and we're going to take a look at those. So let's put 10 minutes on the clock, and we will go now. Okay. I want you, right as we're starting to think about this, I want you to think about this. What's the brightest light you've ever seen? Was it like a spotlight? Was it maybe if you've ever been to a lighthouse and you saw it functioning and that light? Those are pretty bright. You know, what's the brightest light you've ever seen? And I'm going to venture to say whatever the brightest light was, it probably blinded you a little bit. And what's the darkest dark you've ever experienced? I think of a cave. Sometimes if you've ever gone on those adventures in the mountains where they take you in the cave, and sometimes there's you go on a boat or like a walking tour, and all the lights are out, and you can't see your hand in front of yourself. And I think that one of the things about the difference between light and darkness is the absence of light, which is why it was so important for Jesus to say, I'm the light of the world. Like there's darkness, I'm going to bring light to that darkness. And so I think what a great statement he says. And he says, I am the light of the world. Now he does this at the Feast of Tabernacles, which is this week-long festival it commemorates God's protection and provision throughout the 40 years of the Israelites in the wilderness. And light was an important symbol of this celebration. The Hebrew people used torches to light these 4 candelabras that would illuminate the whole temple court. And this light symbolizes the pillar of fire that guided Israel through the darkness during the Exodus that God gave them. But on the final day of the feast, while the candelabras were still burning, Jesus, standing in the temple, spoke these remarkable words from John 8:12. He says, I'm the light of the world. Whoever follows me will have the light of life and will never walk in darkness. Jesus refers to himself as the light, not just of the temple or Jerusalem, but the whole world. I'm the light of the world. He's a light that awakens us from darkness, the darkness of our sin. Some of the people became stuck in this deep darkness of sin and spiritual death. And we realized, and Jesus was, when we're stuck there, we are separated from God. But Jesus drags our sin into the light so we can be freed from it. It's only by bringing it into the light that we can examine it and see it for what it is. And sometimes it loses a lot of its power. Although sometimes it still has a lot of its ugliness as we bring it out, but it becomes less traumatizing than when we keep our sin in the darkness. Jesus is the light that illuminates the way to salvation and eternal life. The world has no other light but him. It is Jesus or darkness, theologically speaking, and according to Jesus. Choosing to follow Jesus allows you to walk in the light of his salvation and the freedom from the bondage of sin. Once you invite that true light into your life, you'll never walk in spiritual darkness again. Now, I think in regards to our recovery, this process, it looks a lot like the 4-step when we take our inventory. And we're taking an inventory, we're looking at our sin, we're looking at all the darkness, and we're bringing it into the light. And so one of the things that we can take comfort that Jesus is the light of the world, because I think sometimes when we approach something like the 4-step inventory, we get scared. We're like, what are we going to find? What are we going to see? But we also have, in the light of the world, we have Jesus' presence. One of the things it says, and I love this imagery that they use, this is in the 12 and 12, and it's in step 5, but it's talking about step 4. It says, if we have swept the searchlight of step 4 back and forth over our careers, and it has revealed in stark relief those experiences we'd rather not remember. If we have come to know how wrong thinking and actions have hurt us and others, then the need to quit living by ourselves with those tormenting ghosts of yesterday gets more urgent than ever. We realize we don't want to live with this. Now that we put light on it, we're like, we need to get rid of this. And this is also where Jesus comes in. But I love that inventory process of taking a look what's going on. And we get to do it in the 10th step as we do that daily inventory. We've learned how to do an inventory by doing that initial 4-step inventory. But then we continue to bring that light of the world into our lives every day, where we say, where have I fallen short? Where was I wrong? Where did I make a mistake? Now, what's interesting about the timing of this expression is just as food was scarce when, it talked about I'm the bread of life, but in addition to food being scarce in first century, so is light. In Jesus' day, when it was dark, it was dark. They didn't have electric lights. They didn't have, they didn't have a lot of light. So when Jesus calls himself the light, it's a pretty big deal. It's not a nothing burger. It's a significant comment, and it has weight to it. The reality is, the world around us, whether in Jesus' day or today, or even our own lives, they're darkened by sin. We can see the brokenness all around us. We can see all the brokenness in us. We don't have to stumble through it blindly. Jesus will light our way through the darkness around us. I think of, that one of the differences between light and darkness. If you've ever tried to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, you may know the path to get to the bathroom. But if it's dark, you still take halting steps. If you have just a little light, even amidst that darkness, you can see your way clearly. And that's not even without even turning on the light. That's how impactful light, even just a little light in the darkness, can make all the difference. A bright light can make all the difference and can really change things. Think about all the times that God gave light to his people throughout the scriptures. In the very beginning, God said, "Let there be light." He led the people of Israel by a pillar of blazing fire, which is kind of referenced in when Jesus makes this comment. It kind of has a reference to that moment. Think of the light after Moses saw the glory of the Lord. His face was so bright, he had to wear a veil. The scripture says that God dwells in unapproachable light. Like we can't get too close to us. Jesus is putting himself in a different category altogether. He provides spiritual light for anyone who follows him. Not just Moses, not just the people, but for anyone. Each and every one of us can have that spiritual awakening, can have that moment of being reborn, which really allows the spiritual light to come into our lives and allows us to reflect that spiritual light out. Those who don't know Christ walk in darkness. They feel their way through late at night to the bathroom, that walk, stumbling, landmines of sin and destruction, tripping on things, or just walking more slowly than God intended toward our destiny. We don't walk in paths of peace and joy and righteousness when we're in darkness. But when we have light, we have that opportunity. And that's when we do what is right. And we're not blinded by sin. And that the steps help us to get there. God has opened our eyes to not only behold the glory of Christ, but we now walk in the good, well-lit paths of God. We're not walking down the dark alleys of life. We're not trying to get things past people or trying to figure things out. He is the light that shines on the path of righteousness. I love that because the longer we stay sober, the longer we stay clean, we continue to make right choices. We continue to improve that. I think the longer we stay sober, the road of right decisions and right living, it gets narrower and narrower and narrower. And so that we know what is right from wrong and we try to make those decisions. It is, as Jesus says, "I am the light of the world." It would be clear for those who are listening to draw an immediate comparison also between Jesus and the Son, the S-U-N. And this comparison to the Son, the S-U-N, is powerful on its own. By referring to himself as light, Jesus is making a direct claim to being the Messiah. This is important. The teachers of the law and others present in the temple would not have missed or mistaken the meaning of his words. So often people say, Jesus is a great teacher, he's a prophet, but he didn't really claim these things. No, this is one of those times where he claimed to be the Messiah. When he said, "I am the light of the world," he was making a reference, I am the Messiah. That is not to be mistaken. That is not to be misunderstood. One of the things that we see is that's really neat about light, and it's kind of light bears witness to itself. Every day when the sun rises, it tells you it's there. It lets you know, I'm here, you can see me. The only people who cannot see light are those who are blind. Jesus was described as the true light that gives light to everyone. There were many who were able to see for the first time that day and throughout the ministry of Jesus, and maybe even through the ministry of Recovery Church. But there are many who remain blind. And no matter how bright the light is, they just won't look. And it's contempt maybe sometimes prior to investigation, as is referred to in the big book. Those who follow Jesus are like travelers who follow light in a dark night. You shall not walk in darkness, but have the light of life. The light shows what we could not see and guides our every step. We shall never be left alone as Jesus guides our way. Our part is to follow him, to submit ourselves to his guidance and respond to his directions. It's not enough to look at his light and to gaze upon it. We must also follow and walk in it. When I asked you in the beginning, what's the brightest light you've ever seen? If you were only looking in it, it would blind you. Ideally, the brightest light you've ever seen guided you. And if it hasn't, when you think about Jesus, let that light be the light that guides you. It is the light at our feet, not only at our eyes. Jesus is that bright of a light. So today I encourage you, let the light of the world guide you in all areas of your life. I thank you so much for tuning in to Studio RC. We encourage you, like this video, share the video, subscribe. We want to continue to get the word out and this message out about both Jesus and recovery and the message of Recovery Church to those who want to see. Maybe they're ready to see. And we'd love for them to do that. And we'd love to walk alongside of them to do that. So get the word out, spread the word. We thank you so much for tuning in today. And we just tell you to remember Recovery Church, there's 12 steps and one goal. God bless, and we'll see you in the next episode of Studio RC.